Hello.
Hi, it's
Hello?
Russ Klein.
Hello?
Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just a minute. So if everyone will just please mute their lines, we will get started just momentarily. Thank you.
Now click it again. Click it again. Click mute all again real quick. I want to see something. So now whenever we want to open for questions, maybe you will want to do that again, right?
I don't think
But
so.
when you
I'm going to
open
make
for
them do it.
questions, if they want to talk, you're going to have to allow that permission.
Good afternoon. We are going to get started right away. We still have people joining. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today. I am Allison Schaberg with Consolidated Planning Group. We are a special needs planning firm working with families that have children with special needs. One of the very most common things that we hear all the time are about questions as it relates to SSI, Medicaid, Social Security, Disability. And so today we are honored and excited to have our special guest, Andy Hardwick here, who is going to be going through the ins and outs of Social Security and what you need to know as a parent and when to apply. We have a lot of questions that have been emailed in that we are going to address. And then we also have a chat box available, and we would like you to put your questions in the chat box as they come up. And we're going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. Andy's presentation is very, very informative, and I think a lot of the questions will be answered throughout the presentation. So thank you again for joining us. Just to share a little bit further, Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic financial planning firm for special needs families. There is definitely a connection between financial planning and special needs planning, as it is so important that you maintain your child's eligibility for future government benefits. So that's where there is oftentimes there's a disconnect when it comes to financial planning, because many advisors are not well versed in understanding the nuances of social benefits and how, just one slight mistake could cause your child to lose their eligibility. So we're happy to be here today, and we're happy you're here. And I'm going to turn things over to Andy.
Oops. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. If you could advance the slides now to right.
Okay, sure.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Allison, and thank you for everybody from Consolidated for inviting me out today. This is an important topic, and a lot of times parents get confused about the two disability programs we have, SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income, and SSDI, which is the Social Security Disability Insurance. So I hope after today's presentation, it's a little bit clearer. I know you're not going to absorb everything that I say, but I will direct you to our website, socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov, for more information about both programs And if you have some questions that we're not able to address today, Allison shared my email. You're welcome to send me an email and I will try to address your concerns. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. Okay, so let's talk about how is SSI different from Social Security. Okay, SSI is, well, it's an assistance program. So there's questions about income and assets. So you have to have limited income and resources, what you would normally call assets. It's not based on work credits, not like Social Security. In most states, if you are eligible for SSI, you are also eligible for Medicaid. You don't have to apply for Medicaid, it's automatic. We just tell the state that you are, your child is now eligible for SSI and Medicaid coverage starts. In order to receive SSI, you have to be blind, disabled, or 65 or older. In other words, if you're 65 or above, you don't have to prove a disability. If you're under 65, in order to get SSI, besides proving that you have some kind of need, economic need, you have to prove that you are blind or disabled. SSI is funded from general revenues. It does not come from Social Security. So that's why there's a lot of questions about income and assets, because it's an assistance program. It's not an entitlement program like Social Security is. Okay, next slide. Right, so as I said before, who can get it? Anybody who's blind or disabled, okay, with limited income and assets. However, the disability, you have to meet the definition that Social Security has for disability. Just because you say that, well, my child is disabled and, so you're going to expect to get assistance from Social Security if you meet the criteria. And I'll tell you in a few minutes what the criteria is. Citizenship or residency. In order to get SSI, you must be a citizen in most cases, okay? Unlike Social Security. In Social Security, under Social Security, you just have to be in the country legally. But SSI, if you're not a US citizen, you have to have worked here 10 years, or if you're a minor child who's not a US citizen but disabled, your parents, between the two of them, have to have worked 10 years in the US, okay? Otherwise, you don't have to prove a disability if you're 65 years old or older, but we're not addressing that group today. So, okay, next slide. Okay, so the citizenship question, you have to be a resident of the US or the Northern Mariana Islands. In case you're curious about where the Northern Mariana Islands are, just think of Guam in the South Pacific. That's where the Northern Mariana Islands are. Their inhabitants are US citizens. They can receive SSI. Otherwise, you have to be residing in the 50 states. If you move to Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands, you will lose your SSI. You can only get it in the 50 states or the Northern Mariana Islands. Generally, you must be a US citizen. If you're not, you have to have worked in the US for 10 years and accumulated 40 credits. Okay, next slide. All right, so what is the definition of disability? If you're 18 or above, the definition is a physical or mental impairment that's going to keep a person from performing substantial work. Substantial work means basically working and earning over like about $12.50, $12.60 per month gross. If you can make, when you're applying for SSI or Social Security, you're making over that amount, no matter what your disability, you're going to be denied. Okay, so it has to be under that $12.60 amount in order to even be considered for disability. It has to be a condition which has lasted 12 months or is expected to last 12 months and may or may not result in death. So it could be a serious physical condition that may result in death, or a physical condition just that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months. If at least 12 months. If the applicant is a child under 18, they have to have a marked or severe functional limitation from a condition that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months. What that means, it's sometimes government gobbledygook. What that means basically is we're going to compare your child. This is for children under 18. We're going to compare them to other children in the community. What are their communication skills? Can they feed themselves? Can they dress themselves? Can they use the bathroom? What's their comprehension level? Things like that, in order to decide whether or not they are disabled. Okay, next one.
Andy, we have a quick question, and
Okay.
I actually have a question too. Could you talk a little bit more about the 1260 and what is the earnings per month again that would disqualify you as substantial work? Could you talk a little bit further about that? We have a few questions.
Okay, that's called substantial gainful activity. That's a measure that Social Security uses to determine whether a person can perform work, substantial work or not. If when you apply for SSI or Social Security disability, you are earning above $1,260 per month gross, you will automatically be denied based on the fact that you're performing substantial gainful activity. Now, once you get approved and you start getting checks, if you work at that level, there are situations where you can continue to work at that level or get earn money above that amount and still be eligible. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay. Next slide. All right. If you're alleging that the person you're filing for is blind, then they have to have the definition of blindness for Social Security is a corrected vision of 2200 or less in the better eye, or you have a field of vision of less than 20 degrees. Okay, next slide. So presumptive disability. In the SSI program, we have a category known as presumptive disability. That means there are 15 different conditions which are so severe that it's likely that this case is going to be approved. Generally, it takes 3 to 4 months to get a medical approval. We don't make the decision in the Social Security office. There's an agency of the state called Disability Determination Services, DDS for short, okay? They receive the medical part of the application, which, by the way, can be filed in all cases online. They receive that part and they contact the school districts for the ARD reports, the doctors, the clinics, the hospitals, all the places that you listed in the medical portion of the application. They're going to be, so if you have one of these 15 conditions, or your child does, it's possible that we could make, or DDS could make a decision fairly quickly. I mean, in less than a month, and decide that they are conditionally eligible and also make them eligible for Medicaid while they're waiting for formal decision from DDS, okay? If the case is eventually denied, which is pretty unlikely, but if it is, that money doesn't have to be paid back. So while you're waiting for a decision on the SSI, your child could actually have Medicaid coverage and be receiving SSI if they have one of those 15 conditions. All right, you want to go to the next slide, please?
We actually have another question on the 1260. So basically they're asking, does that include the parent's income?
No. Okay. Until a child is 18, mom and dad's income and resources, assets, count as though they were the child's. So a child under 18, even though they have no income, could be denied if they have 2 working parents based on the parent's income. Once the child turns 18, what mom and dad have is no longer a factor. So mom and dad could become millionaires, win the lottery. That doesn't matter anymore. Even though the child is still living at home, still dependent on mom and dad, now we're treating that child as an adult. All right. Okay. So this slide here, limited income. The income level that a person getting SSI can have cannot exceed $783 a month. So that's the maximum amount of SSI that you can get in the state of Texas. So if you have, for instance, if you're getting Social Security of $1,000 a month under a deceased parent or a parent who's receiving Social Security, then you wouldn't be eligible for SSI, because even using the $20 disregard, that still leaves $980 of countable income of the Social Security, and that's much greater than the 783. So we would deny that case based on income alone. We wouldn't even make a medical decision because we'd say, well, too much income. So a lot of times parents are frustrated because they go to the Social Security office fully expecting that their child will be approved, and medically, in many or most cases, that child does meet the qualifications, but because we are counting mom and dad's income because the child is a minor, the case is denied. But I just tell parents, be patient, come back, file the month the child turns 18 or after, the month they turn 18 or after, then things will change.
I have two questions that we want to pose. One, as it relates, you had mentioned in a previous slide that they would go seek the records and, you know, the 504, the IEPs, the medical records, and
They don't do it. The parents don't do it. We take care of DDS, which here is located in Austin. They will contact. All you're going to do is put on the medical report. You're going to put names and addresses and phone numbers, especially for doctors. You're going to do all that. Then DDS will take care of that. You don't have to worry about bringing any copies of the IEPs or medical reports or anything like that.
Okay. Yes, got you. And then the other question there was, if a 26-year-old has a trust in their name, does it disqualify their eligibility?
We're getting to that.
I'm going to let you get through some of the slides and then we'll come back to the questions after that. That sounds good.
All right, so next slide. All right, so we have two types of income for SSI, unearned and earned. Unearned income means any income a person receives that doesn't come from work. So it could be alimony, support payments, rents, interest, annuities, pensions, things like that. It's not wages. The other one is an earned income, and that refers to wages. If a person is working and receiving a salary or working in a sheltered workshop, something like that, that would be considered earned income. So those are the two types of income for the SSI program. Okay, next slide. All right, resource exclusions. Now for SSI, we don't count the home where the person lives. So if the person, even if your child inherits a home, if they live in the home, then the value of the home does not count, no matter what it is. Okay? If mom and dad are purchasing a home and they live there and the child lives there with them, if this child is under 18 years old, we don't care what the value of the house is. All right. Now, if the child is under 18 and mom and dad have a second home or second property, that is counted toward the resource limit, okay, which is basically $2,000 per person. If they're living with two parents and they're under 18, $3,000 for the parents and $2,000 for the child. So it's pretty strict. But we don't count the car either. If they have one car, doesn't matter what kind of car it is. Could be a Tesla. It doesn't matter. The car does not count. Now, if there's more than one vehicle and the child is under 18, the vehicle of less value is counted as a resource from the parent, and that counts against the child. Now, remember now, once the child reaches 18, we don't care how many cars the parents have or how many homes they own. That is not a factor anymore. But until they're 18, yes, we need, those are the rules. Okay, now, you can have a person on SSI can have a burial plot, and that doesn't count. They can have a burial fund. They can have a bank account which says for burial up to $1,500, but the money cannot be withdrawn for any other purposes, or otherwise it will be, whatever amount was withdrawn will be counted against future SSI checks. So if you're going to set up a burial account of You can have up to $1,500, and that's not counted toward that resource or asset limit that a person on SSI can have of $2,000. So they could have one bank account with $1,500 and another burial account with $1,500, even though that adds up to $3,000, they're not over the resource limit because the burial account of $1,500 is not counted against that $2,000 resource limit. They can have a life insurance with a face value of less than $1,500. Frankly, I don't know who purchases a life insurance policy with a face value of less than $1,500. So this one is kind of a joke. But anyway, ABLE accounts. Now, this is something new that Texas has only had it for about 2 years or so. ABLE account, the person can actually have up to $100,000 in the ABLE account. And the deposits in the account per year cannot total over $15,000. That's the maximum amount of deposits per year. Now, the ABLE account up to $100,000 is not counted, and that can be used for almost anything: food, clothing, shelter, entertainment, whatever. All right. The only thing to know about the ABLE account, if the child should pass away, then the state will claim, if there's money in the ABLE account left, the state will put in a claim for the Medicaid expenses against the ABLE account. Okay. Now, the last category is a special needs trust. Somebody's asking about a trust. If it's a special needs trust, okay, and Social Security's advice is to talk to an attorney about setting that up, then it is not counted for the person. But you have to understand, the money, any money withdrawn from the special needs trust cannot be used for food or shelter expenses. Otherwise, it would be countable. So you can have a lot of money in special needs trust, but it can only be used for certain expenses, and an attorney can help you set that up. So that is different from the ABLE account. The ABLE account, you can have up to $100,000, or the child can, and that can be used for almost anything. But the special needs trust, only for certain items. Okay, next slide. All right. Again, this just summarizes that what I've told you, that in the ABLE account, you can have up to $100,000, and you can't have more than $15,000 deposit per year in total from different people. It can't total more than $15,000. Okay, next slide. Okay, living arrangements. This is the big one. Okay, so up until a child is 18, they're potentially eligible for $783 a month. But since we're counting mom and dad's income that against them, that might lower that SSI amount from $783 to maybe nothing at all. They might not be eligible because, as I told you before, mom and dad are earning too much money. But once the child turns 18, what they get from SSI is determined by any other income they have and by their living arrangement. Basically, we have two categories in SSI. I'm living in my own household or living in the household of another person. In order to be considered living in my own household and eligible for the highest SSI amount of $783, I would have to be living by myself and show that I could pay the expenses of shelter expenses and food expenses and utilities by myself without any help. Then I would be eligible for the $783. Now, if I live with other people, I could be considered as living in my own household if I pay my share. What does pay my share mean? Okay, if I'm living in a 4-person household, I have to be paying 1/4 of the food, utilities, and mortgage or rent. Okay, so if I live in a 4-person household and the total expenses, food, mortgage, and utilities are $4,000 a month, 4,000 divided by 4 people living in the household means each person's share is $1,000 a month. A person on SSI getting the maximum amount of $783 would not be able to pay 1/4 of the household expenses. Therefore, they get their SSI is reduced to $500+ a month. which I know you're probably thinking to yourself, that doesn't make any sense. Well, this is government think, not man on the street think. So even though it's not logical that you'd say, well, if there's more expenses in the household, then the child should be eligible for more money. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's just kind of black and white with it. You either, if you're living with other people, do you pay your share or not? Your share in a 10-person household is 1/10. In a 2-person household is 1/2. In a 4-person household is 1/4. Now, there's another way that a young person can be considered as living in their own household if they pay room and board, okay? Now, room and board means that maybe they can't pay their dollars a month, like I told you, a 4-person household. But let's say the parent comes and says, well, you know, I'm charging my child $600 out of the $780.
Andy, I think
I'm
you're
sorry.
frozen. We're not hearing you. You're going in and out.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
That is much better.
Okay. So if you allege that the child is in a room and board situation, let's say if previously in that household where they're $4,000 a month where the total expenses and the person's share was $1,000, but you say, okay, I'm going to charge my child room and board. I'm going to charge them $600 a month. All right. So if they get $783, they can pay the $600. All right. And now, since you're saying that they're a boarder, this is a business-like arrangement, okay, then that $600 a month, then that person is considered as living in their own household, and we can give that person the maximum amount of $783 a month. The only downside of that, and I was discussing this with Allison before we started, was that if you say to Social Security that this is a room and board situation, that's $600 a month, which is $6,000+ per year. You're going to have to say, actually, I guess 7,000 plus. You're going to have to say on your income tax, you're going to have to declare that as income to you. That's rental income to you. So if the person that lives in your household, the SSI person, is sharing, that money that you take is not considered income. But if you say, if they're not able to share, to pay their share of expenses, and now you tell us that you have set up a room and board situation, be prepared, because IRS is going to say to you, well, as long as you're saying that's room and board, that's rental income to you, and you have to declare that. You have to add that onto your wages and any other income you have for the year. So that's just something for your information. Okay, next slide.
Andy, can we talk about one question that comes up very often, especially for families that have a child that's turning 18?
Right.
Is when we submit our initial application, should we already have a room and board agreement in place with the child, even though the child doesn't have enough income yet because SSI has not been approved to pay it? Or should
you could do that and say, when they get approved and they get their back check, I will take the money from the back check. Or you could just, they would be in a lower living arrangement, and then once they start getting the checks, you save the money maybe from 2 checks or whatever, 2 months worth of checks added up, and contact Social Security and say, well, now we've gone to a room and board situation, or now they can pay their share because now they're getting this money, and you can show that where they got the money to pay their share from. If there's a change in what we call a change in living arrangement, you recontact us and we'll just up them to a higher amount.
So basically, it doesn't matter which way you choose to do it. So you could say, this is our agreement, and he will be paying rent, and we will be charging back rent once the Social Security gets approved. So you can submit it like that on the front end,
right,
or you can wait for approval and then submit a change once you've got the approval and the child is receiving enough money to actually pay room and board. You can do
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
Okay. Okay, next slide. Okay, Medicaid. Now, in Texas, if you're eligible for SSI, you're eligible for Medicaid. By the way, SSI comes on the first of the month, okay? You're eligible for Medicaid, which is not Medicare, okay? We'll discuss that in a few minutes. So Medicaid. Now, the Medicaid that you get is particular to the state where you live. So the Medicaid from Texas is good in Texas, but not good in California, New Jersey, Florida, or wherever, unless you're there on a visit. So, and then when I say you, I mean the person getting SSI. The person that has the Medicaid goes to California on a visit and becomes sick, they can still use the Texas Medicaid. But if they move there, they need to let Social Security know the month they move so that we can get, so that the Human Services or whatever state office is in charge can issue them a Medicaid card or voucher, whatever, for the following month, all right, for that new state. Because otherwise, if I move to California, I can still use Texas Medicaid this month, because August 1st, as of 12:01 a.m., I was still living in Texas. Therefore, that's good. But starting September, I would need to get Medi-Cal. So what I would do, or whoever my caretaker was they would call Social Security and say, hey, my child has now moved to, we're now in California, and Social Security would contact the California folks in charge of Medicaid there, or Medi-Cal, and then I would receive, my child would receive their card, so that by September then they could be using their Medi-Cal card and no longer the Texas and no longer the Medicaid from Texas. Okay. All right, redetermination. So under the SSI program, we do a non-medical review every 1, 2, or 3 years. If you're a minor child and you have working parents, we're probably going to review the case every year, because there's likely going to be some kind of change that could affect the payment going up or down. Otherwise, if your child is 18 or over and they have no income except the SSI, then they might not get a case review for 2 or 3 years. All right, so this is a non-medical review. It can be done by phone call or in office. Now, the Social Security offices are closed at the moment. We've been closed since March 17th. All right, realistically, I don't know when we're going to open again. So the only way you can do business with Social Security, filing claims and things like that, is by phone or via the internet. Okay, so go to socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov and do it that way, or call on the phone so they can make an appointment, a phone appointment, and you'll do it that way. All right. Okay, next one. Okay, we also do medical reviews. Since the person that's getting SSI was under 65, they were awarded the benefits based on having a disability. So we want to see if there's been any improvement in the condition in the last couple of years. So every 3, 5, or 7 years, the person's case is up for review. All right. So you're going to get a form through the mail that's just going to ask questions about who the person has seen, what medical sources they've been to, have any new conditions developed, things like that. And then those medical sources will be contacted, and we will make a decision as to whether the disability continues or it ceases because the person has made a dramatic improvement so that they no longer meet the qualifications for eligibility. That happens in some cases. In most cases, it's just a standard review and nothing changes because the condition is probably the same or worse. So nothing will change. But this is but make sure now, either when we do the non-medical review or the medical review, that if for some reason you cannot, or your child cannot be at that review, please let us know. Now, the non-medical review, let me just tell you this. When our offices open back up again, if you prefer coming to the office, if you're the child's payee, meaning that's kind of for Social Security almost like power of attorney, means that you get the checks in their name. The check comes your name for their name, okay? If you are their payee, they don't have to come in with you, Okay, we don't have to worry about that now because the offices are closed. But sometimes when the offices are open, parents think that they need to drag their kids in, and they don't have to, because if the parent is receiving the checks on behalf of the person as the payee, then we only need to see the pay. We don't need to see the person themselves, because sitting in a waiting room with 100+ people and can be very stressful for a young person, so with disabilities. So we don't want that to happen. Unless they get checks directly, but otherwise the payee should come in. All right, next slide. Okay, work incentive. So, okay, you've done the work. Your child turns 18. Now we're not counting you or your spouse's income or assets. So you come and apply for SSI. So they get on SSI. Then all of a sudden, the school is kind of pushing the kids. They've got them in a transitional program, and they say, well, we're preparing them because we want them to work. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I just got them on SSI and Medicaid. They go to work, they're going to lose their benefits, or they're going to lose their Medicaid. Not necessarily, okay? We have different kind of programs to help people with disabilities who want to go back to work or want to start work for the first time. And these are just some of them: impairment-related work expenses, blind work expenses, plan for achieving self-support, continued Medicaid eligibility, and student earned income exclusion. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so student earned income exclusion. If your child is a full-time student and under 22, all right, they can actually earn up to $1,900 gross per month, okay, and it not be counted until they reach for the year a maximum of $7,670. So if they are working and they're on the SSI program and they're a full-time student and under 22 years old, they can actually make up to $7,670 before we start reducing their checks because of their work income. Okay, so that's one of the programs that we have. Next one. Plan for achieving self-support. I told you at the beginning of the presentation that, for instance, if a young person is receiving Social Security of $1,000 a month, they're not going to be eligible for SSI, but based on income. Suppose the child is high functioning and they say, okay, I'm going to use the $1,000 a month to pay for schooling, tuition and fees. I went to U of H. I got accepted. This is here in writing. This is what my tuition and fees are going to be. And they're going to turn out to be $1,000 a month, which is what I receive from Social Security. And then they write up a work goal. My goal is to become a counselor. It's going to take 4 years to do that. And it's going to require $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year for tuition and fees to achieve my goal. All right. They submit that to Social Security. If it's approved, the $1,000 a month that they were getting from Social Security, or maybe from work or whatever, is not counted toward their SSI. So now they can apply for SSI and get up to $783 and receive Medicaid. So they could be getting Social Security of $1,000 and SSI of $783 and have Medicaid through SSI. So now, writing up a plan can be sometimes a little bit challenging, but there are places, Fort Bend Center for Independent Living, Houston Center for Independent Living. They don't charge. They work with people with disabilities, and they help you write up a pass. So if you are interested in your child, if they get some income and you want Social Security to count less of that income so their SSI isn't reduced as drastically, if they come up with a plan and how they're going to spend that other income that they have toward getting an education or job training for a certain goal, then that money that they spend for that would not be counted when we calculate their SSI, okay? So now we're going to do a review of that case about every 18 months just to make sure that they are sticking to their plan and spending the money for that. Okay, now, can you change if a child has one vocational goal? Can, in the middle of the program, can they change it to a yes? They write up a new pass, present it to Social Security, and if it's approved, then they continue. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. But I would suggest if you live in Fort Bend County, contact Fort Bend Center for Independent Living, or in Houston, Harris County for, Houston Center for Independent Living, and they can help your young person write up a plan so that we count less of their money and they would get more SSI. Okay, next slide. All right, so the responsibility for SSI is let us know if there's any change in income or assets or number of people in the household, or you move to a new place, because all these things are factors in determining the living arrangement. So a person that maybe was in one household and couldn't pay their share, maybe the family moved to another house, and maybe now the person could pay their share, because maybe in the new house, the house is paid off. So the mortgage no longer counts as one of those monthly expenses. So the monthly expenses, instead of being $4,000 a month, are now $2,000 a month. And it's still a 4-person household. $2,000 divided by 5 is $400. $2,000 a month divided by 4 is $500 a month. So the person can now pay their share, which was originally $1,000 a month. It's now $500 a month. So if they're getting just $500 something from SSI, we can raise that to $783. So any kind of change of address, change the number of people in the household, or change of income and resources, please let us know. If you leave the US for more than 30 days, the SSI has to be suspended, as is the Medicaid, until you're back 30 days. If you leave and go to a hospital and stay there for several months, you need to notify us. So just notify Social Security of any changes. All right, next slide. Okay, let's talk about Social Security. Social Security is an entitlement program. Somebody has to have worked for it. So a lot of times when I talk to parents, I say, what kind of check is your child getting? I say, oh, they're getting Social Security. So I ask them, are you or your spouse getting benefits? No. Is your spouse deceased? No. Has your child worked? No. Well, then your child can't be getting Social Security. They're getting SSI, all right? So in order for them to get Social Security, they have to have a work history, or they have to have a parent who's getting disability or retirement from Social Security, or a parent who has passed away. Now, if a child is under 18, they get Social Security under their parent automatically without proving a disability. So if I pass away and I have children in the household under 18, they're going to be entitled under me by virtue of being minors. They don't have to prove a disability. But if they want to continue getting those benefits past 18, they have to prove that they're disabled. Okay, so this is what happens. So if I have a child that's 26 and neither my spouse nor myself is receiving Social Security, that child can't get Social Security unless they have a work history, or my wife or I start getting benefits. So let's say my child turns 26, now I start getting Social Security retirement benefits. Okay, well, normally children can only get benefits under their parent up to 18. But this is a child with disabilities. If I can show that those disabilities began before that child was age 22, they can receive benefits under me. Okay, so how would we do that? How would that be proved? Well, we would go back to the ARD reports, clinics, hospitals, things like that, but it would have to be backdated to before the child was 22. If that could be proved, the child is single and they have a serious disability, that child, or not a child anymore, young person, would be entitled under their parent. Okay, even if a person is 40 when one of their parents passes away or starts getting Social Security, as long as that 40-year-old is single and show that they have difficulty working or they can't work at all, and that disability existed before they were age 22, they could be entitled under their parent as a disabled adult child. Okay, next slide.
Andy, we do have a question.
Okay.
Well, a question and a comment. First off, what I would say is that, can you talk about how when a person applies for SSI the first time, they essentially apply for SSI and Social Security?
Oh yeah. This throws a lot of parents off because usually if they're over 18, we take an SSI application and an SSDI application. And even if your child has no work history. So you're going to say, well, wait a minute, they're automatically going to be, yes, they are. But we're just going to, I guess it's just for statistical purposes. So if you're applying for SSI for your young person, 18 or over, and maybe a week later you get a letter that says Social Security and says they've been denied Social Security because they don't have enough work credits, that's okay. That's just talking about the Social Security. That means they haven't worked enough to collect their own Social Security. But we're still working on the SSI claim. So don't panic, okay? But if your child is 18 or older, they're gonna make them file for both benefits. But like I said, you're probably gonna get a denial, unless they have a work history, you're gonna get a denial saying that the child doesn't have enough work credits to receive Social Security, okay?
Yes, and what we have found is that letter comes first, and so
Right. Right. The denial letter comes first because there's no medical decision to make on that. That's just automatic. We just look at the work record and see that the child has no work credits or not enough work credits to qualify, and that letter is sent out right away. Whereas the one from SSI, like I said, that takes probably about 3 months, unless they have one of these presumptive disability, that one of those 15 conditions, they could conditionally be approved, and chances are that the approval, as soon as the medical evidence comes in, that approval is gonna also take place. So that might be an accelerated process, whereas normally you might have to wait 3 or 4 months to get a medical decision.
Okay, and one last question before we move forward. On the age 22, so basically, I mean, we've run into families many times that say, gosh, I didn't know that I needed to do this before age 22. But the bottom line is even if the child is over age 22, they can go back and be under the parent's record as long as they can prove that the disability began before age 22. Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct. And how would they do that? By the ARD reports, the medical, as long as we could get medical information, a medical proof that that disability existed before age 22, that's good enough, okay? So most likely would be the ARD records and any psychiatric, psychological, or medical visits before age 22. All right, so a person in this category is considered, the classification is disabled adult child. So they're getting SSDI benefits, which stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. So when you get benefits from Social Security based on a disability rather than your age, it's called SSDI. Now, after 2 years of being on SSDI, which by the way comes on a Wednesday, a second, third, or fourth Wednesday of the month, as opposed to SSI, which comes on the first. After being on SSDI 2 years, your child gets Medicare, okay? Not Medicaid, Medicare, okay? If they're, excuse me, if they're still on SSI, when they come on SSDI, they will have Medicare and Medicaid, okay? If they are, now, there are situations where your child is getting SSI, and they're now have to be 18 or older, and then all of a sudden they become eligible for disabled adult child benefits under you or your spouse, because one of you has passed away and had enough work credits while they were living, or is getting disability or retirement. So that amount cuts them off of SSI. Well, guess what? The good news is, under the Pickle Amendment, like what a cucumber becomes, okay? Under the Pickle Amendment, your child can still stay on Medicaid as long as they keep the rules and make believe that they're still on SSI. All right, that means amount of money they have in the bank and all. We can still keep them on Medicaid. No, so after 2 years, when they come on Medicare, then Medicaid would pay the co-pays and premiums on the Medicare, because Medicare is not free like Medicaid is. It has co-pays and premiums and stuff like that. So, and deductibles. So, but if your child is still on Medicaid when they come on Medicare, then Medicaid will assume, or the state will assume all those costs. Otherwise, you can say, your other choice is to say, you know what, this SSI program, they're asking too many questions. I don't want to deal with it. Once they come on Medicare, you can just drop the Medicaid. And then, so with the Medicare only and the SSDI, we're not going to have the yearly non-medical reviews or 2 years or to find out how many people live in the house, or because what they get from SSDI will depend on what the parent made when they were working, or if it's SSDI that the young person is getting from their own work, what they were earning. So it's a different story. SSDI is not an assistance program, so there's not going to be any questions about income or assets. But if you want to keep your child on the Medicaid, then that's different. Then there will always be those questions. But if you just want Medicare only, then but Medicare only is not free unless your child has Medicaid also. Okay, next slide.
Example as to why someone, if a child is dual qualified for Medicaid and Medicare, can you give us an example of why, other than the questions, why they might just want to keep Medicare and just go ahead and drop the Medicaid?
Well, because with the Medicare, they can have as much money as they want in the bank. They can have many homes, inherit whatever. We don't really care, and we won't be so quite as nosy asking about insurance policies and burial plots and things like that. We just don't ask those kind of questions. Whereas with the SSI or with the Medicaid, there's always going to be questions about income and assets, and you got to be very careful about how you set up bank accounts for the child, for the young person, so they won't be disqualified. So it's a lot more hoops to go through. Some parents don't want to do that anymore. Say, you know, I'm through with that. They're getting maybe $1,000 a month from Social Security, and after 2 years they've got the Medicare, and that's that. And maybe their health insurance policy at work or something will cover their child too, their young person. So maybe they just don't want the Medicaid. So now if they have Medicaid and Medicare, they're duly eligible. Medicare is first payer. Okay. The advantage of Medicare over Medicaid, or having both of them, is that a lot more doctors accept Medicare than Medicaid. So once your child gets, or your young person gets on Medicare besides the Medicaid, or in lieu of the Medicaid, they're going to have a lot more choices of doctors and hospitals and clinics.
I have a question. Is in the second bullet, shouldn't it say Medicaid as opposed to Medicare in this example for the resource limits?
Okay, if the only reason for the cutoff is the amount of DAC benefit, then the person can remain under. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, I'm going to have to make it. I didn't notice that. Yes, they can remain under Medicaid. Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that heads up. Okay, I don't recall if there's any more slides. Let's see. Is there a slide after this one?
Yeah,
okay.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes. Okay, so how does a child become, or a young person become eligible for their own Social Security? Okay, they have to have a certain number of credits. How do you earn a credit? For every $1,410 gross that you earn, you get 1 credit. Whether you earn that amount in a day, a week, a month, or in a quarter, once you get $1,410 gross, you got 1 credit. The most amount of credits you can get per year is 4. Okay, 4. Now, a person under 24 years old to get their own Social Security based on their own work would just need 6 work credits. So if they work for a year and a half, maybe at McDonald's or Kroger, whatever, they might, within 2 years, have enough work credits to collect their Social Security. It wouldn't be a whole lot. It's not going to cut them off the SSI, but they're going to be duly eligible. So after 2 years, they're going to get the Medicare, and they're still going to keep their Medicaid, and they're going to have, the Medicaid is going to pay all the deductibles, copays, and premiums of the Medicare program. Okay, next one. Okay, let's just go. We don't need to go over that one. We've already gone over that. Nope, not that one either. Okay, Medicare has 4 parts. I'm not sure. We really don't have time to get into that, I guess. But A, B, C, and D, you come to Social Security for A and B. But if your child is on SSDI, they're automatically signed up for Medicare A and B after 2 years. What's A? Covers hospital benefits. What's B? Covers doctor benefits. Okay. C and D are different. C is like a Medicare Advantage program, Medicare Advantage plan, like an HMO type. You got to go to private plans for that, or go to Medicare.gov and then do Plan Finder, or call 1-800-Medicare. Medicare has a 1-800 number 24/7. You can call them and talk to them, and they will assist you. Medicare Part D is a prescription drug plan that pays for prescription drugs. So if your child is on A and B and they want a prescription drug plan, they need to sign up for D also. But if you have Medicaid, you don't have to look into D. Don't worry, you'll get a drug plan through Medicaid. So if the child is just on Medicare only, they got A and B, they're going to have to sign up for D. But D is through private plans, so they can't come to Social Security for D. C is for that Medicare Advantage plan for people that are on traditional Medicare A and B, or A, B, and D, and they're looking for money saver. So they could, if they're on A and B, they could switch to a C plan, which has the D, the prescription drug plan, included, and that's a money saver for them. It's a little bit cheaper if people are paying for the Medicare. But if they have the Medicare and the Medicaid, then they don't. I guess they can look into a C plan. I don't really know if they. I think they might have some C plans might be for kids that are duly eligible, but we don't have. I don't have training in that because Social Security doesn't deal with that. So I really don't want to step out on a ledge and tell you, well, this, that. I don't know too much about how it works for duly eligible people, but you can look into that, contact the private companies, or call 1-800-Medicare, or dial 1-800-Medicare and find out what how that works. Okay. So there's the information for Social Security, socialsecurity.gov, SSA.gov, or you can call 1-800-772-1213. However, I'm going to give you a number here, since most of you live in Fort Bend County. I'm going to assume you do. Okay, here's the number for the Stancliffe office, the one at Southwest. This is the office number. Now, we are not working in the office. Everybody is outstation, working from their home, but we have access to computer system. I don't take claims. My job is education. I haven't taken claims for 20 years. So, but I am outstationed at the Southwest office because that's nearest my home. So I can actually work at any office. But here's for if you live in Fort Bend County or the Southwest part of Houston, here's the number for the local office: 1-866-592-1608. 1-866-592-1608. That's to communicate with your local office. You can still call the 1-800-772-1213 number. Now, both those numbers work 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Because of COVID-19 and the closure of offices, our hours are limited to 9 to 4 now. Once we open back up again, we'll be back at the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you need to call Medicare, remember, it's a 24/7. Don't call them during the day. You're going to be waiting on the phone for a long time. Call them after 5 because they're going to be there. You can even call them on the weekends. They're going to be there. But Social Security, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And after COVID, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Okay.
Andy, we have a lot of questions, and I know that we're at the we're past 1 o'clock, but I do want to try to get through some of these questions.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to power through, and we're going to just try to power through these just as quick as we can. I have a few questions that were emailed to me, and then I've got questions in the chat box, and I'll just read them to you. Can you tell us what the criteria is for a newborn to meet eligibility?
Well, usually low birth weight if it's a premature child, and you're going to say to yourself, how come I know of kids that are in the hospital and they're on Medicaid, but I know the parents and they both work and they're well off and their house is nice, because while a child is in the hospital, they're not living in the parent's household, so mom and dad's assets and income do not count. So if the child has to be what they call a NICU there for a couple of months, while they're there, in case the parents' insurance doesn't cover it, Medicaid will cover that hospital stay. Now, once they come home, the first full month, so if they come home on the 1st of August, since maybe one minute after midnight, they were still in the hospital, for August, we're still not counting parents' income. But starting September, parents' income and assets count. So they could be cut off at that point. But while they're in the hospital, we're not counting mom and dad's income and assets.
Okay, and there's a question on, could a parent ever have to pay back Medicaid assistance?
Medicaid is, well, if it was, if the child were found not to be ineligible for some reason, because the complete information was not given to us, maybe the child did not, or I'm sorry, the parent did not tell us that there's another parent in the household, or they were given a raise, or they went over their resource limit or something like that, then that could cause a payment, an overpayment with SSI. And I imagine that somehow we would contact the state, and the state would say, well, then if they weren't eligible from January through August of 2020 because of another bank account that you never told us about, then their Medicaid has to be, the expenses have to be reimbursed. Also, if the child passes away and there is an ABLE account, the state will file a claim against that ABLE account even though the child was eligible while they were alive, they'll still file a claim for the monies in that ABLE account for at least partial reimbursement for the Medicaid expenses.
So I have a lot of questions on what records should you bring to Social Security, and basically the bottom line is you don't need 5 years of records or anything like that.
You don't have to bring anything, just
number.
Names and addresses. And I prefer, look, we prefer you do it online. Okay, if everybody's watching this online, you should have the ability to go to ssa.gov and then be able to, on the top where it says search or topic menu, I'm sorry, click on menu, that'll take you to the second page, and then click on supplemental security income. And there's the page where you can fill out the medical report. Everybody should be able to do that. And then you may or may not be able to do the medical report in person or by phone. If you can do it online, fine. But if you file for your child before, there may be a restriction, and they may say, well, you can't do this online, the non-medical part. Then you're just going to call and make an appointment, and they will call you back and just ask you the questions by phone until we open back up again. So don't worry about that.
Okay, so we know about guardianship, that's certainly an approved thing with Social Security. But if
No,
we
no, excuse me, wait. Yeah, it's okay, but remember, guardianship doesn't entitle you to get the checks on the back. You have to come to the office and file to be the representative payee. A representative payee is like, it only is internal for internal Social Security purposes or SSI purposes. You're saying that you're showing us the guardianship papers, or the doctors who made the medical decision on your child said, this person is not capable. So that means they cannot handle their checks because of a mental or physical limitation. That means that you come in and apply to be their payee, or you do it by, in these days, I guess, online or in mail, or I'm sorry, by phone. You apply to be their payee. That means it's going to be like being their guardian, like having power of attorney. You will sign the papers for them. You will get the money for them. But the bank account has to say your name for them. By no stretch of the imagination or by no means should you put their money into your bank account. You have to establish a separate bank account with your name and their name on it, showing that they are the owner of the bank account. But you can do the bank functions for them. You can do all that, the fiduciary responsibility for them. But that's the way it has to be.
and does that hold true for the whole supported decision making as well? I mean, so the decision of being a representative payee will depend on what needs to happen. So whether you have supported decision making or guardianship, or you could be the representative payee without guardianship or support.
Right. Yes, you
Okay.
could. You don't need to be a representative payee. It has no standing outside of Social Security. You're just saying that this person is not capable for some reason. If that's backed up by the doctors at DDS, by the medical personnel, and they say, yes, this person, based on what we have, is not capable, then you are going to be that person's payee. So the letters are going to come your name for their name, and you are going to answer the questions for them. But you are responsible for answering truthfully, but you are representing them. So you will be doing all the signing.
Okay, and yes, can you remind us for the parents that have children that are under 18, we know that we can have one house, and for a married couple, the assets are not to exceed. Can you just remind us?
3,000. Okay. If you have more than one, it's $3,000 asset or resource limit for the parent. If they have a house and that's the only house they have, they live in it, that doesn't count. If they have one car, we don't care what kind it is, we're not counting it. If they have more than one car, the car of less value, whatever the cash surrender value of that car is, or whatever's been paid on that car so far, that's what is counted toward that $3,000 limit that the parent can have. So what I would suggest to parents is that you go online to ssa.gov and type in under search, understanding supplemental security income or understanding SSI. Either one will work. It's about a 100-page book, but it has all the rules and regulations of the SSI program. I know it sounds scary, but look into it and get prepared. Even if it's a couple of years away, it's always better so you know what needs to be done, what you need to prepare, what kind of savings you need to set up, what you need to do in the household and things like that. So time goes by fast. In the meantime, I would suggest to parents, get your child on the Medicaid waiver list. That takes, here in Texas, years before they get, but hey, again, as soon as you find out your child has a serious disability, get them on the waiver list. And I mean, you never know, things could change, and maybe Texas asks for some help with Medicaid from the federal government, and then the waiting time is cut in half. So just get their names on the list. And if they do become eligible for Medicaid waiver, don't worry about it because they become eligible for SSI. They'll get the SSI based on being eligible for SSI. All right, so either way will work. Medicaid waiver now is not through us, that's through the state, okay, through the state of Texas Health and Human Services. But the other Medicaid that we provide, which federal/state, that comes through being eligible for SSI.
Okay, so we know about the minor children's parents' income is counted once they turn 18. It is the income of the individual, not their parents.
Right.
So
right.
if an adult disabled person is living with someone else, a boyfriend or etc., they're not married, or just living with anybody in general, the assets of that individual, of the person that they're living with, would not be counted against them, would it, if they're not?
That's right. Only if they consider that other person as a spouse. If they had gone through a marriage ceremony or something and that person was a spouse, then that would be counted. But if they're living, even if they're living together, even if they have children together, if they're not married, then we are not counting the income of the partner at all, because they're not that's not considered a couple for SSI purposes. So that the income and assets of that other person is not countable. Same thing if you have a child that's being brought up by grandparents in a non-parent household, okay? We have situations like that where grandparents are now caretakers because mom and dad are either incarcerated or passed away or nowhere to be found or irresponsible. Okay, so if mom and dad are not in the household and there's non-parent relatives there, we're not counting the income and assets of those relatives, even if the child is under 18. We're treating that child like an adult. So now we're going to determine that child, their SSI payment based on their living arrangement. So are they paying their share or not, or is this going to be a room and board type situation or whatever? So that's how we would determine their SSI. But what their grandparent had or other relative had or caretaker had, that doesn't count.
Okay, can credit cards be counted against you, and can qualified IRA money, retirement money, be counted against you?
I'm not sure. What about the credit card? How would that?
They have access to cash through a credit card. Is that counted as
okay? Is that cash? Is that like a loan, or is that actually your money? So it depends. If it's a loan, that's a different story. But if it's your money, then it's now with the IRA account again. Does the person have access to this? If the person has access to it, if money can be withdrawn or it can be cashed in or canceled, then that would be considered an asset, a countable asset.
Okay, and if they don't have access to it, if it's in the
then it's not. If they don't have access to the monies, they can't. We can't count it against them because they can't. See, that's the whole reason that the life insurance, if the face value is over $1,500, is countable, because in theory a person could have maybe a life insurance policy for $100,000, which after X amount of years is now worth, let's say the cash value is right now $5,000. What if tomorrow they change their mind and say, you know what, I need that money? Well, if they can cash that in and get the $5,000, that's why the cash surrender value of the policy, if the face value is over $1,500, then whatever the cash surrender value of the policy is countable. Now, if it's a term policy, that has no cash surrender value. So you could have a term policy of $100,000 or get one out on your young adult, and that will never be counted against them, because if that policy is ever canceled, that gives no cash to the person who's canceling. So those kind of policies, you can get that kind of policy for a person.
If the individual, so for instance, if I am the owner of a policy on my disabled child, whether now she's an adult, if I'm the owner and the child has no access to the policy,
Then
it's
we're
not.
not counting it. It doesn't exist. For us, it doesn't exist.
So for
Even
all,
if it's on your child, but she doesn't have access. You're listed as the owner, so we don't care. The child is over 18, we don't care.
so that's the workaround for all of the parents that have life insurance on your child. As long as you are the owner of that policy, and you can change the ownership free of charge with the insurance carrier, then that is the workaround for that issue. Okay, let me get here. So basically, just as a reiteration, SSI is a means based, so it has to do with your assets. Social Security, also known as SSDI, is based off of 40 work quarters. So we have a question. It talked about a gentleman whose wife became disabled before age 50. She didn't work quite enough hours to have Social Security benefits, but he's worked enough hours. Would she be eligible for benefits now?
No, not now. Not now. She would have to wait till she's 62. And then if he's collecting, when she turns 62, he is collecting, she can file for spousal benefits, even if she never worked. But right now, if she doesn't have enough work credits for to get Social Security disability, then she can't receive them. And the SSI, we would be counting her spouse's income and assets. So chances are that would make her ineligible. But I mean, she could try and see, but otherwise she'd have to wait till she's 62. Now, if her husband predeceases her and she's 50 years old, at least 50 when he dies, and the disability is within 7 years of his death, she could file for disabled widow's benefits, which would be basically about 71.5% of his benefit had he lived, but his Social Security benefit would have been. So she would get but that's a disabled widow or widower. You have to be at least 50, and you have to have a disability that occurred within 7 years of the wage earners, of the worker's death. Now, regular widow's benefits, if you're not disabled, or widow or widowers start at 60. Or if the worker dies and leaves children in the household under 16, possibly the widow or widower could collect benefits. But if they're working, their wages are probably going to be too high for them to collect until they turn full retirement age. But the children can get benefits until they turn 18 or 19 if they're still in school. And of course, if they have a disability past that. So Social Security is a family program. If I'm getting disability and I got kids in the house under 18, they're going to be getting benefits too. And that's not going to cut my benefits down at all. They're going to get benefits under me until they turn 18 or 19 if they're in high school, or beyond that if they have a disability.
So basically, so if a child is qualified for SSI, and they're deemed disabled, 2 years goes by, they're dual qualified for Medicaid and Medicare, and they're under the adult disabled child because it was all deemed before the disability occurred prior to age 22. And so everything kind of clips along at the rate, the $783 a month. Then the parent retires or becomes disabled,
right,
the work record. Can you explain how that benefit increases at that time, or what they're entitled to? Is it 50% of the parent's benefit?
Right. If the parent is deceased, it could be 75% of the parent's benefit. So, but usually it's about 50% of what the parent gets. So that may result in them being cut off of SSI. But remember what I told you about that Pickle amendment. If the only reason they were cut off, they have to be at least 18. If the only reason they were cut off of SSI is because of the amount they're getting from SSDI now as a disabled adult child under a parent, then they can continue on the Medicaid, even though they're not going to see any SSI anymore, and it's SSI checks because their SSDI amount is too high, they can still stay on the Medicaid. Because remember, they're not going to come on Medicare for 2 years. So if you drop the Medicaid, you say you don't want it for 2 years, I hope you have another insurance to kick in to cover them until the Medicare kicks in. Otherwise, they stay on the Medicaid. That doesn't always happen. If there's a foul up for some reason and the state doesn't get that information, that's okay. I can always give you the citation from the operations manual of Social Security, where you go back to the Medicaid office and say, well, wait a minute, they're still entitled here under this amendment. Here's the citation. And they'll always get, parents have never had, every time they've contacted me and have issues, they went back to Medicaid, no more issues. The child got under Medicaid. So that's, that's an easy fix.
Perfect. Okay, so what is the 1260? Again, that was substantial work. So basically, if you're applying for the first time for SSI, if you're already making 1260 or more a month, that's kind of a definitive sign that you're going to get denied. Is that basically
Right.
what?
Exactly. Yeah, you're gonna get denied because that's considered substantial gainful activity. I'm trying to see here, Allison. I know we're gonna do another presentation that's going to talk more about. There's so many programs that we have that we really didn't talk about, and that we have for young people with disabilities that want to work. So I would like to, maybe we can arrange for another time when we can get together and just go over these special things. For instance, subsidy. If your child is working and earning $1,000 a month, but you know that the reason they're making $1,000 a month is because the employer is a friend of yours, and he's really, or she is paying them what they would pay somebody else, even though the quality of work or quantity of work that they produce is not really worth $1,000. We go back to the employer, and the employer says to us, well, I pay them $1,000 a month, but the real value is $700 a month. What we're going to count is the 700, not the 1,000. The 300 is a subsidy, so we're not going to count that part. There's also impairment-related work expenses. If your child is making, let's say, $1,000 a month, but where they work, like I know Houston has a fabulous transportation system, okay, and I'm laughing about that, but or let's say Fort Bend County, even better, all right? So Fort Bend County, they're working somewhere that there's no access to public transportation to that facility. So they need to get there by Uber. That's $400 a month for Uber, all right? If you come to us and we approve that, the $400 a month that they're spending in order to be able to work is then not counted. That part of the $1,000 a month they make per month is not counted. So instead of the starting point to determine their SSI is not $1,000 a month in work income, it's $600 a month in work income. And then we subtract $85, then whatever's left we divide by 2, and then whatever's left there is what we count. So there's a lot of things that we have in place to help people who are trying to get to work, because the goal of these programs, of the work incentive programs, is to see if we can get everybody to work and off of SSI and SSDI. Now that's not realistic for everybody, because some people just can't go in the workplace and just work at the level of people that don't have disabilities can, okay? We understand that. So if that happens, that's okay. They can still continue working, have that extra income, and keep the SSI or SSDI or both programs, okay? But some people might get to the point where they can actually learn a skill and make enough money where they can eventually come off and get insurance through their employer like everybody else and be paid and make money like every. That's the goal of these programs. But if not, we want to make the person as independent as possible so they could have that extra income and just have more possibilities of things that they can do.
Yes. So if a 26-year-old has a trust in their name, does it disqualify their eligibility? And
It has to be a special needs trust.
Additionally, what I would say is we highly recommend you working with a skilled attorney that's well-versed in special needs.
Right.
Because the first party special needs trust actually has to have a Medicaid payback provision in it, or it will fail to qualify as a special needs trust. So the answer is the trust will be counted against you, but a special needs trust, if set up properly, will not be counted against you as it relates to assets for the child. So then we have, I'm confused by the $783 a month versus $1260.
No, $783 is the maximum amount of SSI we pay. If a person is classified as living in their own household and they have no other income, that's what we're going to pay them, $783 a month. If they're considered as living in another person's household, then they're going to be paid a little over $500, like about $520, $525 a month. That's the other amount. Of course, the $783 could be reduced if you have other income. So if I'm on SSI and my Social Security is $520 a month, okay, there's a $20 disregard of all other income, so that's 500 of the Social Security is countable. 500 subtracted from 783 is 283. That's what my SSI amount would be, is 283 a month if I were getting $520 a month from Social Security.
Okay, it said, are proceeds from a trust unearned? We talked about earned and unearned income. What about proceeds?
The unearned income, which means that we just disregard the first $20.
Okay. And can I convert a trust to a special needs trust? And that depends, and that is a lawyer question.
That's a lawyer question. That's beyond my pay grade.
Yes, we definitely don't touch those, but it just depends if it's revocable or irrevocable and whether or not it can be converted.
Right.
And we can make referrals for special needs planning attorneys.
Same thing if you want to make a funeral contract. If you have excess assets, let's say, and you want to do a funeral, as long as the contract is irrevocable, it could be a $50,000 funeral with a brass band and everything, as long as it is irrevocable, meaning that funeral contract can't be canceled. So that could be for the container, for the service, for the space and everything, and include maybe even the cemetery space, all in that contract. As long as it's irrevocable, we would not count it.
Andy, if a child is already getting SSI and then they turn 18, do they have to reapply, or what is the process at the point?
Okay, yeah, what's going to happen at 18, they're going to get a medical review of their case, because now they're going to be looked at as an adult. We're going to use the adult standard rather than the child. So they're going to get a medical review. But unless there's been a radical change in their condition, they're probably going to continue to be eligible.
And the other question is if the eligibility was determined in years past off of past medical records, when they do a kind of a re-examination, they're looking at present medical records and present condition of the individual. Is that okay?
Yeah, so they're going to be looking at the current records. If there aren't any, we will set the person up for a consultative exam at no cost to them.
Okay. A trust cannot, okay, so a trust cannot be used for food and shelter, and that's basically rent or mortgage payments. But the question was asked, can a special needs trust buy a house outright and not be used against the individual?
If you use the trust to buy a home and the person on SSI lives in the home and that's the only home that's in their name, that's fine.
Okay.
So if I have a rich uncle, if I'm 18 and I have a rich uncle that passes away and wills me their home, and their 2021 Tesla, that's fine. If that's the only car I have and I move to that home is not counted as an asset, and neither is the car.
Okay, let's see. So if a child is set up in a room and board situation, can the parent still claim them as a dependent on the parent's tax?
No, I don't think so. No, because now you're saying they're a boarder. No. How can you say they're a dependent when you're charging them for room and board? But again, I am not an IRS person. I'm not a tax person. So, but that's what I would conclude, because you're saying that they're independent, they're a renter, they're a boarder, they're not even part of your household technically. And now, how are you, if they're not part of your household because they're a boarder, how are you claiming them as a dependent? That's the way I look.
That goes back to what you said is about, like, if there's 4 people in your family, the 1/4, they have to be paying their fair share for you not to deduct things on your taxes. But if they can't,
No. Whether they pay their share, if they pay their share or more than their share, or they don't pay their share, you can declare them as a dependent, because in that situation, you're not considering them a renter or a boarder. You didn't sign a document with Social Security saying, no, I'm going to charge X amount for room and board. You're just saying these were the household expenses. These are the number of people in the house. They were able to pay 1/5 or 1/2, or were not. Whether they were or were not, as long as you're not alleging that they're a boarder, then you can put them on your income tax as a dependent, because they're part of your household. It's only when you allege that they're paying room and board, so now you're alleging that this is a separate household, they're a boarder in your home, and actually you're saying the paper you signed with Social Security is, I know that if this person couldn't do this, they would have to move out of my house. I'm treating them as though they were a boarder. This is a business-like situation. So.
Got it. If you apply online, how long, other than the 15 conditions that is kind of like a slam dunk for SSI, how long are you seeing the turnaround times if you apply online nowadays?
3 months, 3 to 4 months.
Okay. And then someone says that they applied in July and they were told to mail extra documents for disability determination to the Social Security office. And now that the office is closed, is someone coming in and processing this mail?
Okay. All offices are closed to the public. 98% of us are working from home. We have the office manager, the district manager, and the assistant district manager, and a few supervisors working, and the supervisors working in the office taking care of technical things. So they're picking up the mail and doing all that. So don't worry, you can still mail the documents into the office, and somebody that's being distributed and that's being taken care of. So we're still doing business. We have not shut down Social Security during all these months. We are still doing business. It's just we're doing it in a little different manner. But if you go to the office and knock on the door, nobody's going to open the door. There are limited situations, like if an emergency situation that requires a face-to-face, that you would come to the office, but you would have to set that up by an appointment. It would be something that would require a personal, face-to-face interview, and we would set that up. But no, if you just came to the door and said, no, I really need, no, they're not going to open the doors for you. It's not going to happen.
Okay, so a question is, and we just have a few more questions. We're going to kind of, and if anybody needs to drop off, we certainly understand, but we definitely do want to answer your questions. Can a disabled adult keep SSI and Social Security from his parents?
What do you mean keep them from his parents? You mean not tell their parents that they're getting it? Is that what you mean?
We're asking, can they get SSI and qualify for
SSDI? They can get SSI. Yeah. Okay. Let's take this same child. Okay. He's in a transitional program. So he turns 18. He comes on SSI. All right. So because of the transitional program, the high school is going to place him to work at Kroger. So he works, and all right, after 2 years, maybe let's say, or 2 or 3 years, he's accumulated his 6 credits. He's under 24. He's accumulated his 6 credits. So now Social Security is going to send him a letter saying, oh, we looked at your work record and we see you've accumulated 6 work credits here. You now qualify for SSDI. So he comes in, or the payee comes in and files for SSDI on his behalf. And like I said, it's not going to be a big amount, because it's going to be based on his or her earnings at wherever they're working. So that's not going to be, but so they're going to start getting SSI and SSDI, and after 2 years, they're going to have the Medicare. Now, as they continue working, the SSDI is slowly going to go up, little by little, a little more every month, every year as they go up. Their benefits are going to be changed to a higher amount. So, that's, yeah, so you can be on SSI and SSDI at the same time, your own. Yeah.
Okay, so there was a statement that said, someone said Medicaid also provides benefits under waiver programs.
Right. That's through the state. That has nothing to do with us. You get the name of your child on a list for the Medicaid. And what the state is saying essentially is, look, we know that care for children with disabilities is very expensive. And you're doing us a favor by keeping your child in the household and not saying to the state, hey, you need to institutionalize this child or provide services to the state, because, so you're saying, if you give me the Medicaid, if you give my child the Medicaid, I can take care of him at home. And so the state says, okay, in return for that, we're not going to give you any monetary thing, but we're going to give you the Medicaid. We're not going to count you and your spouse's income and assets, but we're going to give your child the Medicaid. And that's how the Medicaid waiver program. What happened is when Medicaid was expanded under the previous president, Texas was one of the states that said, oh, we don't want federal money, even though the government promised to pay for the additional Medicaid expenses so more people could get on Medicaid. The state said, no thanks. So, it's a question, we have to hold our politicians' feet to the fire. You need to find out who your representatives are. And now this would be through the state legislators, not your federal, senators and representatives. This would be the state and the Texas state legislature. You need to talk to them and say, what's your stand on expanding Medicare? How can we change this? They want your vote. They should know how you feel, and you should get, people organized to say, hey, why can't we accept more money and get more people on, instead of having kids wait 10 years or so or longer before they get any kind of Medicaid assistance? But again, this is a question of the legislature saying, hey, we need to change this and get more people on so they don't have to wait as long.
Okay. Can you still earn work credits when you're on the student income exclusion?
Yep. Just because the income is being excluded doesn't, as long as Social Security taxes are being taken out, and they should be by law, you're going to look at the pay stub, and it's either going to say Social Security taxes or FICA, F-I-C, Federal Insurance Contributions Act. That's the name of the act passed in the 30s that authorized your employer to take out the Social Security taxes from your wages. So as long as you see that on the pay stub, or you see Social Security taxes, that money is being taken out and you are getting credit. Yes.
So if a person is getting Social Security, also known as Social Security Disability, that they're not counting their assets. It doesn't matter what they have in the bank or what they own. It's only SSI and Medicaid that is truly looking at what assets they own. It's means based. Can you confirm that? There's a lot of confusion with that.
Yeah, with SSDI or any kind of Social Security benefits, we are not counting what you have in the bank or what possessions you have, how many cars you have, how many homes you have. That is not a factor. Okay, so if you just get strictly any kind of a Social Security benefit, that doesn't count. Now, but if you're dually eligible, if you have SSI and Social Security, well, we may not count it for Social Security, but if you're getting SSI, your child is getting SSI, it is a factor. It's not going to affect the SSDI or any other kind of Social Security benefit, but it will affect the SSI. So you could, sometimes people make a mistake and they say, or they're where the child becomes eligible under their parent for the SSDI, and they say, oh, well, now my child is not getting SSI anymore, but they're still getting Medicaid. So they think, well, since they're not getting SSI, now they can have as much money as they can. No, they can't, because if you do that, then the child's going to lose their Medicaid. If you don't care, well, then that's all right. Then just put as much money as you want in the bank, and that's all right. But they're going to be without any kind of medical insurance for 2 years, or at least the Medicaid insurance until the Medicare kicks in. But if they stay on the Medicaid and then later they come on Medicare after 2 years, then Medicaid will pay all the costs of the Medicare, and they will have access to a lot more doctors and treating sources, and Medicaid will pay the cost of the Medicare deductibles, copays, and premiums.
Okay, so if a parent delays their Social Security benefit, they have an adult disabled child, will the child also get a higher increased benefit amount later as well?
Yeah, well, if the parent gets a higher Social Security, then that should result in the child's Social Security also being higher. And all by the same token, we have people, if you get retirement benefits and you're not yet full retirement age, which is anywhere from 65 to 67, but for practical purposes, 66 to 67, if you're still working and under full retirement age, that could impact your Social Security amount. But once you reach full retirement age, you can make as much money as you want. And as a matter of fact, that money is going to increase your Social Security. So we have a lot of people today that after they retire or as they retire, they continue working or they get a new job. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at those wages. And if they can increase your Social Security, we're going to add those on. And that means if yours increases, so does the Social Security of the people who get benefits under you, spouse and children, things like that. So, yes.
Okay, so did you happen to have the Harris County number you provided, Fort Bend?
Center for Independent, no, you have to look it up. It's Harris, it's not Harris, it's Houston Center for Independent Living, HCIL. As in Larry, HCIL, Houston Center for Independent Living, Fort Bend Center for Independent Living. There might, a couple other counties also have centers for independent living. So, but basically, if you live in Harris County, you contact Houston Center for Independent Living. If you live in Fort Bend County, Fort Bend Center for Independent Living. And then they will help you out. They're also, anything I told you today, they know all about these programs. They work together, they partner with us, and they don't charge for their services. They're really, really a tremendous asset and a tremendous help to anybody that maybe wants to know how these subsidies or special conditions work for Social Security. They can help you out a lot. So they're a great resource.
So what happens, here's another question. If I have a 19-year-old, I have not filed for guardianship, can I still speak and apply on his behalf?
Yes, you can. We don't care about the guardianship question. What we care about is this 19-year-old capable or not capable? And that's going to be decided by the DDS, the Disability Determination Services that makes the medical decisions for Social Security. They're going to contact the doctors, and based on the information, the medical information, they're going to make a determination as to whether the person is capable of direct payment or incapable of direct payment, in which case somebody needs to file to be their payee. So if you're pretty sure that they are unable to handle their benefits, you can file to be their payee. And then later, if it's determined that they're eligible for direct payment, then we will you know, contact them through you and have them come in and file the paperwork or do that. Yeah, come in and file the paperwork. But otherwise, you can, well, you can't come in right now, but you can do it by phone or you can do it via the internet and then file to be their representative payee.
Okay, we are guardians of our son over age 18. So if he receives his check in his name, so, okay, it's asking if he receives his check in his name or our name, do we need to open an account under his name? That was, yes. I mean, so you shouldn't have commingled funds. It doesn't necessarily.
Right. Don't have commingled fund, no. And don't have a joint account either. Because if you put your child's checks into your account, it's a joint account, then that means legally they could come in and take that money. Legally, all that money in a joint account, all that money belongs to the owners of the joint account. So even though $2,000 may be your money and $500 may be their money, and they're over 18 years old, that whole $2,500 is considered their money, and that would make them ineligible due to excess resources.
So I want to ask a further question on that. So we have a lot of parents that have an account for their kid. It's in their kid's name, but they're authorized on the account. Like maybe the account was set up as the child was a minor. Now the child's not a minor, so they're authorized on the account.
Well, that's okay. That's okay, as long as they just don't put their monies in there, just the child's money. That's okay.
Okay, I got it.
But now, as a payee, the account has to be worded a certain way, like Jane Smith for Mary Smith, or Mary Smith by Jane Smith, representative payee. The bank knows how to set it up. You shouldn't have anybody in the back saying, oh, I don't know how to set this up. All you have to do is tell them you're the representative payee and you bring a letter from Social Security proving that you are, and they will help you set up that bank account with the proper wording on it.
Okay, so this is the housing, like the room and board versus rent, that kind of thing. Under cost sharing scenario, if we finish paying our mortgage, does cost sharing of a house, is it based off of fair market value or what?
No, it's better. It's better for the person because look, all right, let's go back to the 4-person household again. The expenses were $4,000 a month because the mortgage on the house was $2,000 a month. Now that's been taken care of. So that reduces the household, the cost of running the household from $4,000 to $2,000. So now 4,000 divided by 4 makes the person share 500, whereas before it was 1,000. Well, now with 500, they can pay their share. So we can up them to the category of living in their own household based on sharing and give them the $783 a month. So if you pay off your house, that's cool because that means your household expenses have gone down and that makes it more likely that the person can pay their share. The more expensive, the higher the household expenses are, the more difficult it's going to be for the person to pay their share unless they're in a room and board situation, in which case share doesn't matter because with room and board, you're charging a set amount. But again, in that case, if you're going to charge room and board, then that income has to be declared to IRS as rental income. Whereas if they're in the sharing, that's not declared because they're not in a separate household. They're in your household. Now, the person who's getting SSI does not have to file income tax on their SSI. SSI is not taxable income. It's unless you are saying, unless you're getting the money from the SSI for room and board, then it's different. But to the person that gets the SSI is never taxable. Social Security can be in certain situations depending on the amount of Social Security, but SSI is never, to the person who's receiving it, the eligible person, it's never counted as taxable income.
Andy, you have been so gracious with your time today and answering questions, and we've tried to answer as many as we can. We are going to have another series of talks with Andy on other topics. A few things that I want to put out there. Number one, if you're thinking of applying for SSI, there is a blue book. You can download a PDF of the blue book for Social Security, and it has a list of all of the conditions out there, and whatever that condition is, what you have to prove to Social Security to qualify. So that's the blue book. That's a very important book. And Andy mentioned the red book. The red book is for disabled people that want to work, and it has all programs and what, you know, what the rules are of those programs. So I am familiar with the blue book, but I'm not familiar with the red book. So I'm excited to look further about that. Can you point people to, since we've had so many questions about the housing and room and board, is there a specific section on the website that you could point folks to that they could read a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that they go to the SSA website and under search type in Understanding SSI. That's that 100-page booklet that will go into in the section under living arrangements. That will go. Now, they can also go to the website and click on menu, and on the menu page, click on supplemental security income. There should be something on also on income, assets, and other things with the SSI program. But I would suggest, and the living arrangements, I would suggest that they look at that book, Understanding SSI. That goes more into the meat of the how those rules work, and it gives you sample examples and things like that. So that's a very good, whenever we open up again, I'm so old that I like to have books in my hands. I'm not this type of person. I know I know I can take my electronic devices and look at them, but I always like to get paper copies. I have books and books galore. So whenever we open back up again, because I am not able to go to the office, but when I'd be glad to send people paper copies of the Red Book and Understanding SSI. But in the meantime, there's the electronic copy there, and they're great, and they're the most up to date. So they're 2020 should be the Red Book, and the Blue Book is like the color blue. The actual name is Disability Evaluation under Social Security. But why would you type all that in when you could just put in Blue Book? And that's what. So the Blue Book is the manual that tells you what standards we use for disability. The Red Book is the manual that we use that gives a summary of the work programs we have for people on SSI, SSDI, or both. Be careful, because some of those work incentive programs work for SSI, some of them work for SSDI, and some of them work for both programs. So it can be tricky sometimes, okay? That's why I mentioned to Allison, we need to maybe have a separate program just dedicated to work incentives and talk about that. Even so, even after that, I have to tell you that it's going to be, I have to look at it myself several times, because sometimes I just don't remember things. So what is that? Because there are so many rules there. But the important thing is, I will tell you this, make sure when your child gets benefits, please report those to Social Security. Don't rely on your name. Oh, I heard you don't have to say that because that doesn't count. They got an SSI, they get 9 months no, that's for the SSDI program, but that doesn't work for SSI. So your neighbor got it mixed up and you listened to them, you didn't report it, and now you got an overpayment letter. So now the checks are going to be reduced because we are taking back money that we paid erroneously. So you don't want to get in that situation.
If just one more question. I think it could be endless, honestly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, could be.
If you have a child, so let's say you have a family of 4, and your disabled child is living in your household, and then you have another child that is away at college, and they're paying room and board in a dorm, if you will. Is that kid counted or not counted?
No, not counted.
So,
When you have children in the household, if the children, if we're counting parental income, the more children there are in the household that are not eligible for SSI, the less of the parent's income we're going to count. So you could have two families living next to each other, where one family has only the one child who's on SSI, and or who's applying for SSI, and Social Security says, well, you're not eligible because your parents make too much income. Whereas next door, the parents make the same amount of income, but the child is eligible. How come? Because maybe in the next door house, the child had 4 siblings, and the 4 siblings had no income. So we counted for each sibling, there was an extra amount of money of the parents' income that we did not count. But if a child is in college and is living in a dorm, then we don't consider that as living in the household. No.
yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you again, Andy. We will have additional conferences for everyone. There's just so much information, and I think, like you said, it's like drinking from the fire hose. The more you hear it, the more you learn. You read the red book or the blue book, and you learn a little bit more. And then we learn from Hard Knocks,
Yeah.
a few things like that as well. So thank you so much.
My
for being
pleasure.
here today. And we'll certainly have you back. This has been recorded. We will be putting the recording out for the questions and answers. And any additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to either one of us. And again, thank you for your time today. We appreciate you being here.